about evaluating plugins and some strategies to effectively extend WordPress. Can everyone hear me okay? No?
Not very loud.
It's not very loud. Can we bump the volume? I'm going to have to get closer, get more intimate with the microphone. Okay. All right, so I will definitely do that. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm Kathy Zant. I have been working with WordPress since the beginning of time. Before WordPress came along, I was developing data-driven websites for companies using old technologies we won't talk about. When WordPress came along and it was the first blogging platform that had a database behind it, I was like, oh my gosh, we have got to do this. Move over, movable type. I don't know if anybody of you remember the old days of blogging, but it was extraordinarily difficult. WordPress made it easy. But it was a basic blogging platform back then. In the past 3 years, I have been working with Wordfence. I answered the call to help people clean up hacked websites, and I knew WordPress really well, so I started working in security then. Just because when you know WordPress and you see it, it's kind of like knowing your living room. When you see a giant purple sofa in the middle of the living room, you know it's not supposed to be there. It's easy to identify malware as something that's not supposed to be there. So that's kind of what I did starting out with Wordfence. I've worked in operations, and now my job is primarily helping large companies and agencies understand their security and fend off hackers. So our goals today are to learn some strategies for choosing plugins that can take WordPress beyond that basic blogging platform that it started out with. When I started with WordPress, there weren't any plugins. There were themes, and it was really exciting to make your blog look interesting and new. But when plugins really started taking off, WordPress started becoming much more effective at being the tool that brings the small business or any kind of business all together, bring it to the web. So we're going to look at plugins and see if it's the right tool for the job at hand, if it's a high quality plugin, if it's actively being developed, if you have someone actually supporting that plugin and making sure that whatever you're inserting into your website is going to be something that's going to be effective and will work for you, and learn if it's safe. And we're going to have some fun. I'm going to tell you some horror stories. Why do we want to do this? Does anybody here cook? All right. Anybody here really love good food? Woo, me too. What matters when you're cooking? Ingredients matter a lot. You know, I was watching this show on Netflix called Chef's Table. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but have you seen it? Okay, there was this woman in Thailand, and she was like going off into the jungle to find authentic Thai ingredients because she knew that with the ingredients that she put in her food were going to make the dish better. And that's kind of like what we need to do with plugins. We need to go find the best ingredients, because when you're inserting a plugin into your site, what are you doing? You're basically spicing up the site. And if you're putting lousy food into that dish, it ruins the entire dish, kind of like the bad apple spoils the bunch kind of thought. If you put a bad plugin in your site, it can ruin not only your whole website, it can really ruin your day. So what is a plugin? Does anybody here not know what a plugin is? Okay, I will answer this for you because I love beginners. All right, so a theme. Basically you have WordPress, and you can extend WordPress's functionality and the way it looks. You can change the way it looks with themes. So themes are going to change the way your site looks and feels, and you can use different themes. My advice is if you try out a theme, as soon as you're done and say, that's not going to work for me, delete it. Don't just leave it there. Same thing with plugins. Plugins, however, are not going to necessarily be a look and feel type of change, though it can be. Plugins are typically going to add additional functionality to your site. So let's look at some examples. There's an adage in the WordPress world that there's a plugin for that. Whatever you want to do with a website, there is a plugin that's going to help make that come to life. So here's some of the basic these are the top ones off of the WordPress repository. There's contact forms, like contact form 7, search engine optimization, making your site more easily found by search engines. There are your e-commerce plugins. There's WooCommerce, which is the big one, but there's other ones as well. There's anti-spam plugins. There are backup plugins. There are security plugins. There's over 50,000 of them in the repository alone. Plugins turn that basic blogging platform that WordPress started out with and turn it into a data-driven website. So let's think about an example of, say, like a rock band. A rock band, they might want to blog, but they also might want to have their tour dates online. So they might want a calendar plugin that handles all of their tour dates. They might want to sell digital downloads of their MP3s. So they might want a plugin. WooCommerce can do digital downloads that you can sell online as well as physical products. And maybe they want to sell t-shirts. So plugins are going to be specifically chosen based upon your small business or your large business's needs. Whatever you want to do, there's a plugin that's going to help you make WordPress do that for you. Plugins are kind of like Frankenstein's monster. They will bring your site to life. And with any of that power comes great responsibility. If you're going to play with fire, you're going to have to know what fire is going to do for you. You don't want to get burned. So what happens on your site? Say you choose a plugin that's not of very good quality. Whose responsibility is that? Whose finger is going to point at who? Is it the plugin developer's problem if something goes wrong with your site? Is it your hosting provider, your developer if you're hiring someone? Or is it your responsibility? When someone shows up on your website to investigate your services or your products, wants to make a decision of whether or not they want to do business with you, what does your customer think? Are they going to blame the plugin developer? Are they going to blame the hosting provider? No, they're going to look at you. It's your domain name, it's your business, and it's your responsibility to make good decisions based on good data. So we're going to look at ways you can do that. It's all about performance. What can a plugin do for you? Will it do what it says it's going to do? And will it do no harm? Let's tell a horror story. Does anybody know who Mason Soiza is? Someone knows? You read our blog. Okay, so this guy, he's like 25 now. This guy was buying plugins from developers that were already in the repository and putting spam links and backdoors in those plugins and uploading them into the repository. Some of these plugins had hundreds of thousands of installs. It means hundreds of thousands of people trusted that when they clicked update to get the new code from the repository for that plugin, that they were going to get good code. Instead, they got code from Mason. And within Mason's code was some rather questionable links to escort services, payday loans, and pharmaceutical sales. I like this headline because Mason is hopefully going to get what's coming to him. He lives in the UK, but he made a business and made a heck of a lot of money, more money than probably all of us in this room combined made last year by exploiting the WordPress repository. Now this doesn't mean that WordPress is bad, it doesn't mean that you should avoid the WordPress repository. I mean, the people who go through and evaluate plugins for the repository, it's a volunteer team. A lot of things have changed since this happened a couple of years ago, but the story is important to know. It's important to know, one, WordPress is huge. WordPress is a big target. Guys like Mason would like to exploit that big target and make a name and make money for themselves. It is up to us as a community, and it was our research and the community's research and comments in the repository on the support forums that brought this to light and shut this guy down. But yes, it was because of us, and because of all of you, who when you notice something's wrong on your site, when you notice that, hey, I just updated this plugin and something's wrong, and you go into the forums and you say, hey, something's going on here, security researchers like the ones I work with at Wordfence notice that. They make a note of it, they go investigate it, and because all of the information and all of the versions of those plugins are available on the repository, guys like Mason can't do that anymore. Wrong way. Uh-oh. I think my computer's freezing up. Mason, it's all your fault. This guy, I tell you. All right. So let's go by my memory. I've done this speech a couple of times, so if my computer is not going to, maybe we can restart it. The repository is an amazing thing because of the community behind WordPress. It is because of that community that comes together. It's because of that community that watches things. There are different types of plugins. There are the open source plugins, of which there are over 50,000 of them in the WordPress repository. All of those plugins go through a period of review. All of the research behind those plugins are available on the repository. There are also freemium plugins. Those plugins are things like Yoast or Wordfence. Smush is another freemium plugin. These are plugins that are available on the repository, but they also have a paid portion. Another type of plugin is a paid plugin. Is anybody? Yeah. I swear, Mason. Yeah, it's a long password, he says. I work in security. All right, so, okay, so we have, we just talked about the paid plugins, Theme Forest and Code Canyon. Has anybody bought anything from those sources? All right, so what happens when you buy a plugin from Code Canyon or from Theme Forest? You pay the developer, you pay Theme Forest, and you get your theme or you get your plugin. You download the zip file. In order for anybody to see what's inside of that zip file, they have to pay for it. So security researchers like the ones I work for, they don't necessarily go buy all of these plugins. So that is not, doesn't have the open source community effect that we talked about with the repository. There is another type of plugin called a nulled plugin. Does anybody know what that is? A nulled plugin. We'll get this up in a second. A nulled plugin is a plugin that is, what's that?
I don't know what it is.
Okay, yeah, no, I got it. I can multitask. No, not sheets, it's slides, right? Hello. I think I can multitask. Okay. A nulled plugin is a plugin like a paid plugin that somebody has downloaded, and 90% of the time they put a backdoor in it, put it up on a site with 7,000 banner ads you have to click through, and then you download this paid plugin and you can install it on your site. But 90% of the time those have bad things in it, so those are things that you'll want to avoid.
How do we identify node plugins?
Node plugins are, if it's too good to be true, just don't. All right. See, I did remember my speech. Okay. Nulled plugins. I gotta have the joke up here. Get me the hell out of here. If you're on a site that's basically telling you, hey, here's a paid plugin that you can get for free, it's something to watch out for. It's a trap. So we talked about, do you get what you pay for with these paid plugins? Not necessarily. Because you don't have security researchers able to access the source code to tell what's in those plugins, you could have a lot of problems. The community is really what keeps you safe with plugins. Here's another horror story. This is a paid plugin. When I was doing site cleaning, you basically get a hacked site, start going through log files after you get it all cleaned up and see how did they get in. So I'm looking through log files and I see malware access, and then all of a sudden I see this file called remote tunnel on this paid plugin. So I go and look at this. Developers don't like to talk to end users. They don't like to ask pesky questions with hard answers like what version of PHP are you using? Or what version of MySQL do you have on your site? Those types of things end users often don't know. So developers like this create something called a remote tunnel. And this was in a paid plugin. And they basically had a password there. So the password was the same on every site that had this plugin on it. So bad guys found this probably on another hack site with a different vulnerability, realized that that was there, and started looking for this developer's plugins everywhere, because they had remote tunnel in all of their plugins. Because there was no visibility in the open source community, this was not discovered as rapidly as it would have been done if it was in the repository. So, I think I've made my case that understanding what you put on your site is really important. So how are you going to research plugins before you put them on your site? You can go around Googling the plugin name, hacked vulnerability, broke or broken, slow site performance. That's a lot of work and a lot of Google lurking. It's much easier to just look at the information in the repository. So if you go to wordpress.org/plugins, there's a search form there. You can search any of these plugins up. And there's basic questions that you can answer. Has it been updated recently? Like this was a screen grab from Wordfence from a bit ago. This was last updated a couple of weeks ago. Active install over 2 million. It's being supported, and it has been tested with the most recent version of WordPress. And you can see that there are 5 stars, so somebody loves it. All of these factors are important. Here is another screen grab from a different plugin, Limit Login Attempts. It has last updated 7 years ago. It still has over 1 million installs. The last time it was tested was version 3.3.2. Please tell me nobody's using that version of WordPress right now. Please. Keep your WordPress updated. You see up at the top, there's an alert saying this plugin hasn't been tested with the last 3 major releases of WordPress. Now, I've got this plugin on a site. I'm not scared of this big bad wolf, but many of these plugins, you don't know, are they going to work with the next version of WordPress? It's something you have to keep an eye on. It is a risk assessment you have to make when you're choosing a plugin. Is this going to work long term for you? And if you see red flags like this, it's just something that you're going to have to keep an eye on. Here's another plugin. This was Add Categories to Pages. It had a 5-star review though, so wow, it's great, right? But then you start going into the support forums, and you see things like it's breaking other plugins with 0 responses. So this plugin developer is not actively supporting this plugin. It's not being updated anymore, and they're not answering the support questions. Definite red flags. Another really important thing to look at is something called the change log. All software has something called a change log. So if you go on the plugin page and you click on development, look for the change log. This will tell you what's changed. They're logging the changes as the plugin's being developed. This was from Ultimate Member, which last year had some security problems. But you see, they're telling you, we fixed security vulnerabilities in the file uploader. They fixed security vulnerabilities, HTML arguments. So they're at least disclosing to you that security concerns are being fixed. A lot of paid plugins sometimes won't even disclose if they're fixing a security vulnerability or if a vulnerability has ever existed. They'll just put out a new release of that plugin and not really tell you what's going on with it. So the change log is another way for you to tell whether or not a developer is actively supporting a plugin. You know, getting involved with a plugin is kind of like getting married a little bit. Not really, but I mean, you're making a commitment to a code base. Think about WooCommerce. If you have a commerce site, you are developing a store. And all of that information of all of the products, all the customer interactions, all being stored in a data format. It's really important if you're choosing a plugin to look at how that data format is being stored and is it extractable? Is it something that you can export into Excel and run reports on? Is it something that has an easy out if you need to get a divorce from that plugin and use something else because of security or performance or something better comes along? Can you migrate one storefront to another storefront? These are things that you need to consider. Reviews. Always good to learn from reviews. It's good to look at how many 5-star reviews, but it's also important to look at the 1-star reviews. And you're not looking for, this just didn't work for my site. You're looking for patterns. Like, I tried to add products to this and it wasn't working because of these factors. Do those factors apply to your business? So you're looking for patterns that are relatable to what problems you're trying to solve. We take everything with a grain of salt. Like YouTube comments and Amazon reviews, sometimes some of the WordPress reviews can be kind of wonky. There is a database online called WP VoltDB. You can research the plugin here and see if it's got any security concerns. Just because a plugin's in this database does not mean there's problems with the plugin right now. It means there's a history. So again, you're looking for patterns of problems. Is there a repeated security problem with the particular plugin you're looking at? Managed WP has a great resource where you can compare plugins. So say, for example, you're looking at SEO. I took an example of 2 SEO plugins, one massive behemoth, Yoast, and the SEO framework, kind of an upstart, and ran a comparison on them. So it's basically pulling all of the information from the repository. It's the same information as in the repository, but it's giving you it in a digestible format where you can see 2 competing plugins compared. So you'll see their rating, the quality, last update, and you can see how many downloads are happening. So but it's all being pulled from that repository. Code Risk is another resource. You can actually go on here and see, this is a security firm that has an algorithm, and they take a look at the code base and tell you whether or not a plugin has a high score of probability of having problems. So this is a screen grab from some of the most popular plugins. Contact Form 7, you can see they're all in the green, not too many problems. It'll give you some basic information also from the repository so you can do that research. And it'll tell you the trend. So Contact Form 7 had higher problems or higher risk assessment on previous versions. And the repository is what makes this possible, because the repository keeps all of the old versions of plugins. So you can take a look at version 1.8 and compare it against 5.0 and see what it looks like. Here's one, Says Who, has 10 active installs and has a filthy mess of 100. I didn't look at the code of what's in Says Who, but this tells me I might want to, or maybe I might want to look at something else that does the same thing. If you're brave, you could do a code review yourself and download the zip file directly from the repository like our security researchers do. And you can open up that zip file and look at those actual PHP files. And there's a link here, and I'll make the slides available for everyone. But there's a link here that'll tell you what functions in PHP have a high probability of problems. Wordfence, you can use that as well. It's got malware scanning, but it also has alerts to security problems. So if a plugin does have a security issue like Ultimate Member had here, it'll actually tell you that there's a security update. Here's a research tool that you can use to look and see if a plugin is ready for Gutenberg. And here's another plugin that will tell you if a plugin is affecting your site's performance. It's really important to create a test replica of your site. There's a lot of tools that will allow you to do that. basically take your site, instead of installing a plugin fresh on your site and seeing how it works, have a test replica, install the plugin there, and see if it causes any compatibility problems, performance issues, anything that looks out of the ordinary. Really important that if you have a test replica of your site, keep your production site updated, also keep your test site updated. It's basically just another way to look for effectiveness and make sure that a plugin is going to work for you. Uninstall a plugin if it's not going to work for you. I cannot tell you how many sites I have cleaned that have 40 plugins installed and 8 of them are active. And it's like, okay, you've got 32 people living in your house that don't need to be there. They are places for malicious actors to hide malware, vulnerabilities. If code is not in use, delete it off of your site. And it's always good to go and, if you've had a site for a couple of years, go over those sites and go through these tools again and see if these plugins are still making the grade for you. The end result of doing all of this is that a plugin is going to create a wonderful performance for you, a delicious meal, and make your customers happy. So, keep in touch. If you have security questions, problems, issues, I am here for you. And I'm here to answer any questions. We have about 3 minutes. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes?
What incentive do plug up the developers have to maintain the site?
Say again?
What incentive do plugin developers have to maintain it? Like Wordfence, we always tell them free at free version, so if I have a free one, I might pay for the install. But if it's just free, what's the incentive to continue?
Well, plugin developers have different reasons for creating. A lot of times developers will create a plugin because they have a need. Wordfence exists because my CEO's site got hacked. So he wrote Wordfence to solve every security problem he could think of at the time. So they have a need, and they decide to also contribute to the open source community. There's complex ways of monetizing those types of things. But 90% of the time, these are just good people doing it out of, the love of the code, love of the project, and building a business. So, like Contact Form 7, I don't know how they make money, but they keep it updated, and it's sometimes difficult to learn, but the functionality of that is really elegant and simple, and it helps you get a contact form up really quickly, and it's been around forever. So, these are the things you want to look for. Are they, doing this out of the goodness of their heart? A lot of these plugin developers are. A lot of theme developers who are doing it for free are. A lot of the people, WordCamp Miami is happening because of the goodness of the organizer's heart. These people do a ton of work to make this event what it is. And it's something really amazing about the WordPress community that I think drives the success of this platform, because so many people are committed to democratizing publishing, to giving you the tools that you need in order to go out there and build a business. It's really kind of amazing. So. One more minute if there's another question. Yeah? Yes.
Okay. Is there a website version? What's the easiest way for me to do that? I've never done that.
You've never done that before. Where are you hosting?
I'm on GoDaddy.
You're on GoDaddy. Are you on GoDaddy Managed? Or what kind of platform on GoDaddy do you have? Okay. Do you use a cPanel? Or are you just on GoDaddy, like legacy platform? They have so many different platforms. Their managed hosting platform, I don't work for GoDaddy, but they have staging sites that they will give you. But the GoDaddy booth over there, go bug Adam Warner. He's really amazing, and he can help you kind of figure out the best way on their platform to do a staging site. Yeah? Yes, a test site, a tester staging site. Yeah, you could do localhost if you're capable of creating an actual testing site on your local host. That's the easiest way to do it, but you do want to replicate the exact PHP version that you have on your hosting account, the database version, all of those types of things. Yes? Yes, I'll have that the whole presentation. My entire slide deck I will tweet out on Kathy Zant on my Twitter, as well as on Zant.com. It'll be up there on the homepage. I'll put it there. Yeah. Staging a plugin. Create a staging site, a replica of your production site, and install your plugins on staging first. See how it works there, and then do it on. Okay, we're done. I'll connect with you. Thank you guys so much. I need a new computer, don't you think? After this, it's time for the new computer. Thank you so much.